This is Stu Epperson from the Truth Talk podcast, connecting current events, pop culture, and theology. And we're so grateful for you that you've chosen the Truth Podcast Network. It's about to start in just a few seconds. Enjoy it, and please share it around with all your friends. Thanks for listening, and thanks for choosing the Truth Podcast Network.
This is the Truth Network.
The heart of every man craves a great adventure, but life doesn't usually feel that way. Jesus speaks of narrow gates and wide roads, but the masculine journey is filled with many twists and turns. So how do we keep from losing heart while trying to find the good way when life feels more like a losing battle than something worth dying for? Grab your gear and come on a quest with your band of brothers who will serve as the guides in what we call the masculine journey. The masculine journey starts here now.
Welcome to Masculine Journey. We are glad that you're with us today, and we are only 3 weeks away from boot camp. 3 weeks from now, we will be at boot camp. Isn't that amazing? You guys can shake your head, but they can't hear you on the air.
Yes, that's amazing.
Well, David, they could hear you.
Is that like a knock saying like my brain's bouncing around?
Yeah, it was like the rattle. The rattle came through.
The marble was loose, wasn't it?
The marble was loose, yeah. We could hear that part. Yeah. Anyway, 3 weeks from boot camp. So if you haven't registered, go do that now. I mean, not right this moment, but soon. masculinejourney.org. Register for the boot camp coming up November 16th through 19th, which is a few weeks away. But this week's topic, Danny, is yours.
It is.
Well, it's God's, but God gave it to you. Or we're assuming God gave it to you.
Well, yeah, good assumption, I think. So, anyway, I've thought about warfare, and actually we're coming up on boot camp, and we talk about warfare a lot at boot camp and agreements and stuff like that. And so, leading into that and current environment around my house has been not in my house, but, my life has been full of warfare lately. And so just seemed like a good thing to talk about and to process some stuff in that. And so, because when we think about warfare, interestingly enough, a lot of time in modern day American church, you don't hear a lot about warfare. And we talk about that amongst ourselves some, and not beating up on the church, but, it's a real thing. In Galatians, Paul talks about the spirit warring against the flesh and the flesh against the spirit. And, then there's that Revelation scripture where it says a war broke out in heaven. But yet we're just kind of like, just come to Jesus and we'll skip all the way to glory kind of thing. So it's a real thing. And, so we want to kind of break that out and talk about it a little bit, some personal stories and stuff like that. So.
Well, thank you. And I think Robbie has the first clip.
Yeah, we're going to let Robbie start this thing.
Robbie, you have the first clip because, it just makes sense.
It just makes sense. Yeah.
It could happen. Whatever. It's pretty, it's an honor, Danny. I appreciate it very much. But this clip kind of speaks for itself. And if you don't recognize the warfare in it, I don't know what to say. But, when you start to hear this kind of stuff, it might take you back to the garden for a minute and recognize it immediately. So go ahead, Sam.
This game is going down, and it's all your fault.
It's your fault, Marty. You've ruined me. This is all your fault.
This is all your fault. This is all your fault.
It's all your fault.
If we die, it's kind of your fault.
Great. So this is all my fault.
This is all your fault.
This is all your fault.
You idiot, this is your fault.
Looking to blame throw, but that one was Razor's fault.
Yeah, so... Sam, did you recognize Shrek in there just for a minute? He's in there.
I didn't. Actually, I was trying to listen to the movies and figure out what they were from.
Yeah, all sorts of different. One of them was actually Shrek. He's in there.
Yeah.
But, when you start hearing that word in your head, it's somebody's fault, you can begin to recognize that there's probably warfare. You'd imagine that there was a bit of warfare going on in the Garden of Eden when Adam started to say, well, it's that woman, and the woman is saying it's that snake, and on you go, right?
Well, it's a woman you gave me, God. So ultimately, it was God's fault.
Yeah. Exactly right. So, I like to think of it as this check engine light going off in your dash that's flashing at you. And in spite of the fact that you might have been in ministry for a number of years and you might have a Christian, talk show or 2 or 5. Maybe you've had 14 boot camps to experience warfare on all sorts of levels. Let me just tell you that you can still just completely Ignore the warning signs and charge where no man has gone before. So I was at Nikita's actual man camp last week and had a real opportunity to serve, which was real honor. And I was actually on the floor praying with a man, and another pastor bent down and prayed exactly what I had prayed, and the warfare was on, right? And I was totally offended. And I was completely certain it was his fault. I mean, I could not have been more certain that it was his fault. But I saw the fruit of what happened as he prayed that prayer, that the man that was actually, trying to get some breakthrough, he broke and he started to get that breakthrough. And so actually the effectiveness of his prayer was good, but that didn't change the fact that I ignored my check engine light that was saying, Robbie, this is warfare. Robbie, this is warfare. Robbie, this is warfare. But all I could sense was actually I was being triggered by something. My oldest sister used to always correct me, always used to do that which I'd done the right way just to show mom and dad that it had to be right. And so unbeknownst to me, Satan had found just the right way to push my button. And so after we got up from the floor and I went and charged this pastor who was significantly shorter than me, and those people who know me know that I'm 6'5", and the way that he described it later, he said, man, I didn't know what to do. This guy's a foot taller than me, and he looked like he wanted to kill me. This wasn't funny at the time, obviously, but I was like, what are you, and I started to blast him. And then, fortunately, some other people in ministry made me sit down, and then I watched God just completely do a mighty work amongst all the different people that were in the campers, whatever. And as I sat there and processed it, oh, wait a minute. You're hearing that, it's your fault. You're hearing that, you're offended. This is warfare. Mm-hmm. And I was able actually to repent in front of everybody and get a lot of healing and very cool, really, because all the ministry team was there and they perceived that this pastor was, at a certain level and that Robbie was a certain level, and they watched us resolve this conflict. And so they thought that, wow, Christian men can do this, can, actually scream at each other and everything can be okay. But again, it was him having grace from my screaming. He never screamed at me. But honestly, if you know me well, I still have the capability of going off, but the Lord's working on me and hopefully I'll get on the other side of that. So that was my warfare over the weekend. This is fresh, happened last weekend.
So what advice would you have for somebody, right? Because in certain situations, they're our fault. I mean, sometimes it's pretty clear. I mean, that there's fault, right? But there's also still warfare going on. And so is there any advice that not just you, Robbie, but anybody would have that? How do you sort those? How do you deal with the warfare and, not deal with you have to deal with the fault sometimes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead, Danny.
Well, I was taught years ago that you have to look at your side of the street, and I've countryed it up. You have to clean off your own front porch first. Yeah. So there is some ownership.
Move the refrigerator.
Move the refrigerator. Yeah, get a couple of cars out of the yard. That kind of stuff.
I think Jesus said something about a plank in your eye.
Yeah, plank in your eye. It was a porch plank.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So but looking at that and assessing, I have a part to play in everything. And I've gone through this process over the past few weeks, but with some stuff that's going on. But analyzing, okay, I do play a part in this. Doesn't mean I own everything going on. And so, it just kind of like raising the hood as we talk about right here, looking, this isn't quite right. So
what actually really helps me is that there's a verse in the 119th Psalm that says, great peace have they that love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. That's a pretty high standard. And actually, that's my check engine light. Robbie, you're offended, so what is that telling you? It's telling you that this is warfare and you've lost your peace. This isn't the other person's deal right now, because the plank in my eye is I'm the one who's lost my peace, right?
Mm-hmm. One of the keys for me is when I start getting emotional, because my emotions, people say, oh, follow your heart. Follow your emotions. No, don't. Use that as your check engine light. My grandmother, and I may have shared this before, but I'm going to do it again, had a plaque that I absolutely loved on her wall that said, keep your temper. Nobody else wants it. And it was considered a real problem in my household, the way I was brought up, to explode in anger. In fact, for decades, I would never even admit I was angry, and I was eaten up inside because of that. But we have to release it, just not targeting those that are not the enemy. There's an awful lot of friendly fire and warfare, and we need to watch out for that.
Yeah, Ephesians 4:15 says to speak the truth in love. And so what you were talking about, if there's fault, you have to address it, speak truth into it, but do it in love. You know, I think one of the times we try to do either or. We'll speak the truth, but it won't be in love, or we'll you just kind of limit it. It's got to be both. It can't be either. It has to be both of those. Or if you just speak truth, but it's hurtful. You know, that's what we're kind of talking about here. So it's a balanced approach.
I think grace plays a factor in that too. Not only grace for the person that you may perceive as at fault, but grace for yourself to actually have those feelings, because I think the enemy will take it then and potentially turn it into shame and start going down that road, and then you got another foot down the path you didn't want to go. So,
if you say "I love you" through clenched teeth, what message is actually getting delivered?
Well, Andy, to your point there, that the truth, I had a mentor. He used to say, "Truth without a solution is cruelty." So just shouting truth at somebody, and there's no, that kind of thing. That is a cruel way to do somebody. So.
Well, I guess probably part of the answer would always be you go to God with the situation first before you go to the person. And let God work through that with you. Because there are times you do have to, in relationships, accountability is a part of relationship, right? But accountability done wrong, saying I love you through clenched teeth, sends a message that you don't think it sends, right? It sends a completely wrong message. And so walking with God through it would be key, because you do have to get your own emotions out of the way. You got to get, okay, what's triggering this response? What's triggering the anger, right? It's probably not solely this situation. It's something, as Robbie talked about, is pushing against something from the past, right? And being able to separate those, because you may still have to go deal with some fault. But in absence of God, you probably will end up being cruel and end up in a really bad spot, if you don't walk with him through it.
You reminded me of something happened to my wife that struck me as quite funny, but it was a relative who was a Christian, said, "I have to love you because I'm told to, but I'm not going to be your friend on Facebook anymore because you're so stupid." I mean, that was basically the entire story, and that's not really done in love.
No, and there's a lot to unpack there. But we don't have time. We're going to break. Go to masculinejourney.org to register for the boot camp coming up November 16th through 19th. Talk to you after the break.
What we have at our boot camp is something that makes you stronger and gives you the strength to go on your regular walk with God. It's something that will make you be bigger than you were when you got there.
I've been coming regularly, and it's just such a blessing. When you guys invited me, I was at the worst time of my Christian walk. I was going through some things. The first time I came, I don't know if you remember, couldn't even walk. I couldn't even stand up straight. And I'm walking now. I ain't running around a lake yet, but The greatest things is just being around a group of men that love the Lord and sharing his kindness and his love. All of you guys, I done sat and talked with all of you guys, different occasions, different conversations. And it's all been unique and refreshing. You guys gave me a whole different perspective in life, and you can't hide the true, genuine love of God. You can't hide it.
Register today at masculinejourney.org.
I've got to stand up tall before I'm done. Wrap these hands of mine around the gun. Chase the taste of bondage from my tongue. Can you run?
Well, you countryfied that up a little bit.
Hey, me and Art's trying to run a bluegrass theme around here. So
yeah, you're getting close. No, tell us about the bump.
That was from a group called the Steel Drivers. They're kind of a bluesy bluegrass band that we actually went and seen up in Lincolnton, I think, a couple of years ago. Super nice bunch, and I love their music. Obviously, you don't, but that's okay.
Well, that was jumping to conclusion. Maybe accurate, but still, that was jumping to conclusion.
But the song is about, they do a lot of songs that have a story behind Civil War stuff. And the song is actually the story of a man who's entrapped in slavery, and they're getting ready to escape. So he's asking his wife, can you run? Because they've got an opportunity to go. And the lyrics are, they're talking about, can you run? But he says, before he dies, he's going to wrap his hands around a musket. But the start of it was contraband can be a man with a musket on his shoulder. But he's not only going to gain his own freedom by escaping where he's at, but he's also going to turn and fight for others' freedom. So, and I thought about warfare, there's a choice you have to make. You have to stand and fight.
Yeah.
But you have to learn to fight the right way is what we're talking about. Because, you can go raging into battle, and what is the phrase we use at boot camp? You can charge the field quickly, bravely, and die quickly.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. But so that's the bump. So
yeah, and there is the whole piece of warfare that you mentioned is fighting for others, right? Because it's hard enough fighting for yourself. That it helps when you have brothers, or you have sisters, or other people that will fight alongside you, in the battle. To help you kind of fight against that warfare.
And we need those people. We do. We need those people. So
yeah, we need people to speak truth into our life and speak love into our life and help us see, how God sees us, because a lot of times we've lost that sight so easily. Yeah.
Help us break agreements.
Yep. Well, you have a microphone in front of you. I think you're next with your clip.
I am? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Danny picked.
You going to speak the truth in love?
It's your turn.
So this is from Andy Griffith in honor of Danny's topic tonight. So, but this is from the show. I think this is my second favorite Andy Griffith show. It's from I think the title of it is Feuding or whatever. So it's a takeoff on the Hatfields and the McCoys. It's a Wakefield and the Carters, and like Romeo and Juliet, they have a daughter and a son. From each side that they're going to get married, and it's brought them into more feuding, which they didn't need much encouragement. They were doing pretty good on the feuding before this, but it just kind of goes in and just the mentality. They don't even, you'll find out in listening to the clip that they don't even really know why they're fighting and who the enemy really is and stuff. So let's listen to the clip.
Well, now, you must have a pair of mighty sharp eyes there. I don't see no Carters.
You don't?
No, I don't.
I was afraid of that. Drag you up a chair. Have a drink of water. Sorry about putting a gun on you last night, Sheriff, but a fella's got a responsibility to see that his young'uns is brung up right, ain't he?
Oh, of course he does. Don't worry a thing about it.
At times, a fella gets mighty discouraged. You tries and you tries to teach 'em right from wrong, but this late generation just plain ain't got no respect for the elders.
Well, now, I don't know now. Maybe your reason for feuding with the Carters just don't seem strong enough to young Josh.
No, it ain't that.
How you know it ain't?
'Cause he don't know the reason.
He don't? You mean you ain't never told him?
Nope.
Well, how come?
'Cause I don't know the reason.
You mean your pa never did tell you?
Nope.
Well, why?
Well, it could be 'cause he didn't know the reason either.
Well, who was the last Wakefield that did know the reason?
Oh, must have been his grandpa.
Well, then how come he didn't pass along the reason?
Well, it could be the time his young'un got old enough to join the feuding that my great-grandpa just clear light forgot it.
Oh, I'll be dogged. Now, do you mean to tell me that you've been carrying on a feud for 4 generations without knowing why?
Why not?
Well, I don't know. It just seems to me if I was going to take a shot at a fella, it'd pass my mind to ask what for.
I'll be danged if I know where you young folks get all them newfangled ideas.
Reason, Sheriff? Of course I know the reason I'm shooting at him.
Well, how come?
Because he's a Wakefield.
Well, what does that mean to you?
Well, it means got to shoot at him.
Well, why do you have to shoot at him?
Because he's a Wakefield.
Well, why do you have to shoot at the Wakefields?
Cause we're feuding.
Well, why are you feuding?
Cause he's awake.
You know, I don't believe you're understanding me.
And that's the problem. A lot we don't really understand the spiritual battle that we're in. And, Ephesians 6 says we wrestle not against Wakefield and Carter, but against principalities and powers of spiritual wickedness in high places. And I just interjected that, but that's the whole thing, is it's flesh and blood, really, that we ended up wrestling against. And the enemy loves to get it. He'll instigate stuff and get us fighting with one another. And a lot of that fighting is a lot of times how agreements enter in, because it's something that somebody else says that we begin to agree with, and we think we're agreeing with that person and their take on something, but really we're agreeing with the enemy and his foothold that he's got us on some wound or something that's happened to us. But I just love that because that clip really is where we're at. A lot of times we don't really know who we're fighting against, and a lot of times we don't know why. They didn't know why. There was a history there, and then we project that onto the people that are around us of why we are fighting, and we don't really even know, but we've got everybody stirred up and stuff. And it's just the thing is the enemy loves to keep us stirred up against one another. And he also he wants us to be unaware of what we're really fighting against him. He'd love to put the target on God or each other and stuff. So anyway, I just think it makes the point well.
I mean, I think he uses it as a tactic to keep us confused to the point where he can start isolating us. And once, I mean, I know you all know it, and probably a lot of our listeners, once you get isolated, you're going down a pretty rough battle road at that point.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh yeah, you become lion chow pretty quickly for the roaring lion who's looking for people to devour.
Yeah, for sure.
The real scary one in that is, I think about, unfortunately, how the different denominations feud. What? Well, I'm mad at them because they're a Methodist, or I'm mad at them because they're a Catholic, or whatever it is that they're right, and they're not really sure why they differ, but we've been against them for I don't know how many generations, and so we know they couldn't be right.
Or even within denominations, when you have a divide in the denominations where this one doesn't like this of the same denomination, it's crazy.
We have all of 9 elders that are the ruling part of our church.
Are they from the Lord of the Rings?
You'd think. I've always liked Gimli. I'm going to be Gimli.
Okay.
And the elf really irritates me sometimes. But with him remaining nameless, though, we often butt heads on issues. But he said to me, and it gave me a little bit of a pleasant surprise yesterday, that, we agree on 99.9% of the stuff. And I had to say, yeah, we do. And when we're looking at that 0.1%, we're going to fight. But if we can focus on even if it's 50, you focus on the parts you agree on and you'll get along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the enemy is really good at getting us to assign motives to other people's behavior. Yeah, that's one that I tend to fall into, and we don't know really what's going on. We only know what we perceive, right? And so he's good at fueling the fire. Once he's seen a spark start, he'll just keep pouring it on and pouring it on. One of the things that we talk about heading into a boot camp, which we have one coming up in 3 weeks. If I haven't told you that like 4 times, there is one coming up in 3 weeks. So go register at masculinejourney.org. But aside from that, we talk about as approaching a boot camp, and then especially after a boot camp, no major decisions. You got to give yourself a week or two just to decompress, because you got to expect warfare, right? Because the times that we have had issues within the ministry is we've jumped into things right after a boot camp or right after an event, instead of, okay, let's let some things settle down. Let's not pay attention to our emotions. Let's let God be God, and do his stuff. And then we'll come back and revisit it. And the majority of that stuff just goes away, because at the end of the day, by the time you're a week out or you're 2 weeks out, it's like, that really wasn't that big of a deal. That really wasn't something to be frustrated about like I was or what, as the case may be. It's just looking at that and saying, okay, we're going to be intentional. And we do that after every boot camp. We remind each other leaving boot camp, no big decisions. Not the time to accept a new job, maybe. Maybe you want to pray about it a little bit longer. Or, there's some things here because the enemy's going to try to come in and trip you up pretty quickly. He does that all the time, but he especially ramps it up right after boot camp.
Yeah, when I went to Ohio to the Becoming a King that I did with them, it's like I'd been going along pretty good at work. I got 3 things were really jeopardized some of the sales that I was working on right before boot camp. And then that would take me out. I'd be worrying about it and think, but no, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. I know what it is. I see it for what it is. But those things are there. They're real. And a lot of times the enemy wants you to say, no, that's just something that just happened or not. That's the way I used to live. Now you take a more proactive approach of dealing with those, taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ when they happen. It changes everything. It changes your attitude. And then those important times, because you're really going to battle for your heart there when you're at a boot camp. You're protecting that. Then you're able to make strides and advances. So.
Mm-hmm. So before we end this particular segment of the show, we've got about a minute left. What advice would you give them? Am I facing warfare? Well, first of all, the answer is yes. Not are you? Am I? Yes, you are. Right. But what do you do with that? What would you suggest that they do with that?
Well, first and foremost, I would pray about what God would want you to do with it, but understand that you will get through it. For sure, using the tools in the Bible that you learned, as well as doing it with God.
Go to After Hours and download the podcast on any platform, and we have more on the subject.
We do. We're going to talk more about this as we come up on the After Hours, and go to any platform and do that. But first, go to masculinejourney.org and register for what? The boot camp that's coming up in about 3 weeks. It's November 16th through 19th. If you're having financial trouble with it, let us know. We'll find a way to help you. We'll talk with you next week.
This is the Truth Network.